The last thing tech billionaire Miles Harrison expected on a high-speed train was to find a child curled up by his feet crying. The girl was tiny, her hair a halo of dark curls, her brown cheeks streaked with tears. She couldn't have been more than 4. For a moment, Miles simply stared. The polished world he ruled, startups, IPOs, tailored suits, had no room for crying children. And yet something in her sob sliced clean through him. Passengers looked away. A woman in pearls pursed her lips. A man muttered, "Not my problem." But Miles, almost against his own instincts, knelt. Hey, he said softly. "Where's your grown-up sweetheart?" The girl sniffled, clutching a worn, stuffed animal in one hand. Her other hand clung to a silver locket, its engraved words just visible beneath her collar, "Forever yours." The phrase sparked something, a memory distant, but sharp like the sudden scent of rain. He didn't know her, and yet he did. "Let's find your mommy, okay?" he whispered, offering his hand. She hesitated, then placed her small palm into his. It was warm, trembling. The train hummed beneath their feet, steel slicing through the Midwest. First class faded behind them as they walked toward the rear coaches, where the seats were smaller. The carpet worn thin, and the air smelled of coffee and tired people. The girl Zoe, he would soon learn, walked beside him quietly, her steps uncertain but trusting. As they entered, coach class, voices grew louder. Luggage clattered in overhead bins, and the fluorescent lighting painted everything in dull beige. Miles scanned the crowd, his tailored suit drawing stares. And then he saw her, Ava Sinclair. She stood at the far end of the car, framed by a window washed in early twilight. Her brown skin glowed softly in the light, her curls still wild and radiant like he remembered. She held a sketchbook to her chest, her fingers trembling. "Zoe," she cried, her voice cracking. The girl squealed, letting go of Miles's hand and running. Ava dropped to her knees and wrapped Zoe in a fierce embrace. "I told you to stay close," she whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. Her voice was a mix of scolding and overwhelming relief. Then she looked up and froze. The air between them thickened. "You," she said. Miles stiffened. The weight of that word yanked him back to a night 6 years ago. Rain, regret, and a goodbye he hadn't fully understood. He cleared his throat. She was crying. I found her." Ava rose slowly, placing Zoe behind her like a shield. Her sketchbook slipped to the floor, a single page fluttering free. Miles stooped, instinctively picking it up. A pencil sketch stared back at him. A man in the rain had bowed, the lines familiar. Too familiar. This is me," he murmured. "Don't," Ava snapped, snatching the sketch. "You don't get to walk back into my life like nothing happened." Zoe, unaware of the storm swirling above her, peeked around Ava's legs and smiled. "You're my hero," she said brightly. Miles's throat tightened. The sincerity in her voice, so pure, so trusting, pierced his carefully built armor. "I'm just glad you're safe," he said, offering a shaky smile. "Is everything okay?" "V?" a voice asked behind Ava. A tall woman with deep brown skin and long box braids stepped forward, eyeing Miles with suspicion. Her name was Brielle Thomas, Ava's best friend and longtime protector. "You're Miles Harrison, aren't you?" she said flatly. "The guy who broke her heart." Miles didn't flinch. "I didn't know she was here," he said. "I just wanted to help." Ava placed a hand gently on Brielle's arm. "It's fine," she murmured. He brought Zoe back. Zoe tugged at Miles's sleeve. "You're my hero," she repeated, smiling. The words, so simple, struck with the force of truth. Miles knelt, meeting her eyes. "I'm glad you're okay," he said again, more to himself this time. Ava's face softened for a fraction of a second. Then her walls came back up. "Thank you," she said curtly, lifting Zoe into her arms. "But we don't need anything else from you." As she turned away, Miles reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. "Please, Ava, if you ever need to talk, anything." He offered it with a steady hand, pulse racing. She took it after a long pause. Their fingers brushed just a second, but something passed between them, a spark, faint and fleeting. Then she walked away. Zoe waved over Ava's shoulder, her stuffed animal dangling. Miles stood in the aisle, frozen. The silence of the train wrapped around him, but his mind screamed. The locket, the sketch, the eyes. Could she be his? The question haunted him as the train sped into the deepening dusk. "You," she said. The word landed like a blade. Some reunions punch harder than any headline. Miles Harrison stood frozen in the crowded coach car of the Amtrak Empire Builder, his business card still warm from Ava Sinclair's fingers. The soft rhythm of the train was no match for the thundering in his chest. All around him, passengers resumed their chatter, but for Miles, the world had narrowed to one reality. Zoe Sinclair, the girl he had comforted, was very likely his daughter. And Ava, the woman he had once loved and walked away from, was now a mother. Zoe rested on Ava's lap, her head tucked into the crook of her mother's neck. Ava Sinclair, a black woman with rich brown skin and natural curls cascading over her shoulders, sat stiffly in the narrow seat. Her posture screamed defense, even as her hands instinctively soothed her daughter's back. Her sketchbook was now pressed to her thigh, closed tight. The page Miles had seen, the one that mirrored his own face, was hidden but not forgotten. Across from her, Miles remained standing. He didn't ask to sit. He didn't know if he was allowed to. Ava didn't offer, and he didn't dare presume. "I didn't know," he said quietly. His voice was rougher than he meant it to be. "If I had—" "Ava, I swear you didn't know because you didn't ask," she cut in. "You disappeared." Miles blinked, taken aback by the sheer weight of her words. "I left for that startup pitch in San Francisco. I called, but you called once. And when I didn't answer, you let it go." Ava replied, her tone steady but cool. "You left me standing in the rain, Miles. You chose your empire before it existed. You don't get to rewrite that." Zoe stirred at the sharpness in her mother's voice. Ava kissed her temple, instantly softening. "It's okay, baby," she murmured. "Mommy's just talking." The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. Miles shifted his weight, suddenly feeling overdressed in his gray wool coat and Italian shoes. The contrast between first class and coach had never felt so literal, so metaphorical. Then a new voice entered the tension. "Everything good here, V?" asked Brielle Thomas as she stepped into the aisle. A black woman in her early 30s with deep umber skin and long box braids, Brielle moved with the confidence of someone who didn't tolerate nonsense. Her arms were crossed, her eyes locked onto Miles with barely veiled suspicion. Ava nodded once, but didn't elaborate. Brielle, not satisfied, glanced at Zoe, now drowsy again, then back at Miles. "I know who you are," she said flatly. "You're the one who left her behind." "I didn't know," Miles repeated this time to both women. Brielle's brow arched. "Didn't know she was pregnant or didn't care to find out." Miles took a breath. "I didn't even know she was here on this train. I just saw a kid crying and I couldn't ignore her." Brielle looked to Ava, who gave a subtle shake of the head. "He brought Zoe back," she murmured. "That's all." There was a pause. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on track filled the space between them. Zoe opened her eyes slightly, and seeing Miles still there, smiled sleepily. "Mr. Hero," she said, lifting a tiny hand toward him. Miles's heart nearly stopped. He reached forward, gently brushing her fingers with his. "I'm just glad you're safe," he whispered, repeating himself from earlier, unsure what else he could say in front of two women who had every reason to distrust him. Ava's gaze softened for a second, but she quickly masked it. "She's safe," she said. "That's what matters." Brielle pulled out a pack of juice from her bag and handed it to Ava. "Let's go back to our seats. It's late." As the two women stood, Miles saw something drop from Ava's lap. He bent to pick it up, a folded page from her sketchbook. She snatched it back the moment he rose. "Don't," she said again, more tired than angry now. "You gave up your right to know me when you left." He didn't argue. The moment was already too fragile. But he tried once more. "Ava," he said quietly, "if there's even a chance she's mine." Her hand tightened around Zoe's shoulder. "You don't get to ask that." Miles's throat closed around the words he didn't say. Guilt wrapped around his ribs like a vice. Brielle leaned in slightly. "You know what the worst part is?" she said, voice low. "She tried. Ava tried to tell you. She sent letters, called. Someone made sure you never saw any of it." The implication hit him like cold water. "My mother," he whispered. "Claudia." Ava didn't confirm. She didn't have to. Miles ran a hand down his face, stunned. "I need to talk to her. I need to know what she did." "That's your business," Ava said, her voice hollow. "But Zoe, she's mine. And I've raised her without a single dollar of your empire." Zoe, still watching him, yawned and cuddled closer to her mother's shoulder. "I'm not here to buy anything," Miles said. "Not forgiveness, not access. I need to understand." The train began to slow as it approached the next stop, an unscheduled pause in the middle of nowhere, likely to let another train pass. The lights flickered. Brielle moved first, stepping past Miles with practiced ease. Ava followed Zoe's arms, clinging to her tightly. As they disappeared down the narrow aisle, Miles stood rooted in place, alone again. The sketchbook, the locket, the child's face, they haunted him. The train creaked metal, groaning, and the conductor's voice crackled overhead with an update no one listened to. Miles didn't move. In his hand, he still held the business card Ava hadn't used. He stared at it as the train rolled forward once more into the dark. The moment you go viral isn't always the one you planned. Miles Harrison blinked awake as soft morning light spilled through the window of the Amtrak Empire Builder. His phone buzzed incessantly on the tray table, and the scent of weak coffee wafted from somewhere nearby. Stretching slightly, he picked up the phone, expecting an email or two. What he found instead turned his stomach. There it was, a video. Blurry but unmistakable. Him kneeling on the train, comforting a crying child. Zoe. Her small hand in his. The locket around her neck glinting under the light. The headline beneath the clip read, "Tech billionaire caught in tender moment, but is this his child?" More headlines followed as he scrolled. Runaway daughter or PR ploy, Miles Harrison's secret family. His name trended online for all the wrong reasons. He muttered something under his breath and sat upright, swiping quickly through messages. There were dozens. Some from board members, some from investors, all asking the same thing. What is going on? His phone lit up with a call. Claudia Harrison. He hesitated, then answered. "Miles," her voice came sharp, composed. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." "It was a child," he replied. "She was lost. I helped her." "You were photographed with a little girl," Claudia snapped. "And now people are calling her your daughter. You know what that does to our family name, to the company." He rubbed his eyes. "I didn't stage anything. It just happened." "She's Ava Sinclair's, isn't she?" Claudia continued. You saw her again, didn't you? There was no point denying it. Yes. Claudia's voice turned colder. You need to fix this before it gets worse. Deny it, if you have to get a paternity test, but quietly. We cannot let this story control the narrative. His jaw clenched. Did you block her? He asked. Back then, did you stop her messages from getting to me? A long pause. I did what any mother would do. She wasn't right for you. Miles said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Without another word, he ended the call. The train slowed slightly, pulling into a small Montana station. Passengers rose to stretch, some stepping onto the platform. Needing air, Miles followed. The wind hit him crisp and dry. He looked down the train. Through the coach windows, he saw Ava Sinclair, her brown skin softly lit by the sun. Her eyes focused on her sketchbook, though her pencil didn't move. Zoe slept on her lap, peaceful, unaware of the storm swirling outside. He took a step forward, then stopped. What could he possibly say? A voice behind him interrupted his thoughts. Trouble. Miles turned to see an older black man in a faded porter's uniform. The name on his badge read Earl Jenkins. His voice was calm, his eyes kind. No trouble, Miles replied, not convincingly. Earl gave a knowing look. Saw you with the little one yesterday. Reminded me of my girl back when she still thought I was a hero. Miles offered a faint smile. Earl continued. Spent years chasing work, thinking success would fix things. Turns out bedtime stories and little league games matter more than boardrooms. The words landed heavier than Miles expected. You still see her? Earl shook his head slowly. She's grown, but I missed too much. Don't be like me. With that, Earl tipped his cap and walked away. Back inside the train, Miles returned to his seat in first class. His phone buzzed again. A text from his PR director, statement ready. We can frame it as a misunderstanding. Deny paternity. Just say the word. He stared at the message, then at the video, still, Zoe's eyes wide, trusting. Her small voice echoed in his memory. You're my hero. He didn't reply. Instead, he reached into his coat and unfolded the sketch he'd picked up earlier. It was of a man standing in the rain, head bowed. His face. Ava had drawn it. It hadn't been finished. He ran his thumb along the pencil lines. He couldn't undo the past, but maybe he didn't have to repeat it. Some truths aren't whispered, they're declared under lights and cameras. Miles Harrison stood backstage at the Seattle Convention Center, the low murmur of reporters echoing beyond the curtain. Outside, fall rain misted the city's sidewalks, but inside the tension was thick with anticipation. This wasn't a product launch. It wasn't business at all. It was personal. His PR team hovered nearby, holding a carefully crafted denial he refused to read. Miles adjusted his cuffs slowly. The weight of every decision he hadn't made, of every truth he hadn't known, pressed against his chest. His thoughts were not on the press, but on Zoe, her trusting eyes, her little fingers reaching for him, and her locket glinting under the train lights. He remembered Ava, too. Her voice sharp, but her pain real, and Earl Jenkins's words echoed back from the station in Montana. Don't let money steal what matters, son. The curtain opened. Miles walked out into a wall of camera flashes. He didn't flinch. He didn't grip the podium like a CEO giving a keynote. He simply stood there quiet until the room fell still. Thank you for being here, he said, voice steady. There's been speculation, headlines, noise. A few reporters leaned forward. One's pen paused mid-scratch. I'm not here to correct the record, he said. I'm here to tell the truth. He drew a breath. Zoe Sinclair is my daughter. The room erupted. Flashes lit the stage like lightning. Murmurs swelled, reporters whispering into phones and scribbling faster. I didn't know about her, he continued. Not until last week. But now I do. And now I choose to be part of her life. Another surge of noise. A reporter shouted, "Is this a publicity stunt?" No, Miles said, calm. This is a mistake being corrected. A truth long overdue. In a small Beacon Hill apartment, Ava Sinclair watched the live stream on a second-hand laptop. Her brown eyes didn't blink as the man on screen spoke. Zoe curled against her, sucked her thumb, and watched too quietly. He said, "I'm his daughter," the little girl whispered. Ava nodded slowly, brushing a curl from Zoe's forehead. He did, baby. Across the country, Claudia Harrison stood alone in her Manhattan penthouse, her phone still in hand, unread messages piling up. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Miles had defied her publicly, irreversibly. Back at the convention center, Miles stepped away from the podium as reporters shouted follow-up questions. He didn't stop to answer. He walked straight through the crowd, his shoulders square. Outside, a car waited, but he waved it off and continued on foot, letting the rain wash over him. Later that evening, Ava sat on the edge of Zoe's bed. Her daughter was already asleep, breathing softly beneath a faded quilt. The locket still hung from her neck, nestled near her heart. Brielle Thomas leaned against the doorframe. "Well," she said, arms crossed. "He actually did it." Ava didn't look up. He said the words. "That's a start. You think he meant it?" Ava was quiet for a moment. Then, in a whisper barely louder than the rain outside, she said, "I want to believe he did." She rose and walked to the window. The glass was fogged from the warmth inside, but she could still see the city lights blinking beyond the drizzle. He said it. He said she's his daughter. Sometimes the hardest part isn't saying the truth, it's living with what it changes. For days after the press conference, Miles Harrison's name remained a trending topic, but the headlines slowly shifted. No longer scandal, but curiosity. Speculation gave way to deeper questions. Would he actually show up? Would he be a father, or just say he tried? It wasn't long before he did more than show up. On a crisp Saturday morning, as golden leaves danced across Rainier Avenue, Ava opened her door to find Miles standing there, not in a suit, not with an entourage, just jeans, a sweater, and a nervous smile. He held a small paper bag and looked like someone who'd rehearsed 1,000 lines, but forgot all of them the second the door opened. "I brought breakfast," he said. Ava, in a loose cardigan and fuzzy slippers, blinked at him, then down at the bag. "You remembered my favorite cinnamon rolls from Mabel's," he said. Still warm. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in." Zoe came bounding from her room moments later, still in pajamas, her curls a mess. Mr. Hero Miles crouched and smiled wide. "Just Miles today, okay?" Zoe giggled and ran into his arms. They sat at the small kitchen table, Ava cautious, Zoe thrilled, and Miles trying to learn. He asked about Zoe's favorite cartoon, listened to her describe her plush bunny's personality, and watched her make a jelly mess on the placemat. Ava observed him closely, saying little at first, but slowly her shoulders eased. Later that day, they took Zoe to Volunteer Park. The sun peeked through the trees, the last warmth of fall clinging to the air. Zoe ran ahead, her laughter ringing through the crisp afternoon. Miles and Ava walked behind, close but not quite touching. "You're good with her," Ava said after a pause. Miles looked ahead. "I'm trying." "You can stop trying so hard to be perfect," she said. "She doesn't need a CEO, she needs someone who remembers her birthday, someone who listens." "I wasn't ready for this," he admitted. "But I want to be now, if you'll let me." Ava slowed her steps. "She's already let you in," she said softly. "It's me who's still figuring it out." Miles nodded. "I'll wait." As the afternoon faded, they returned to the apartment. Zoe had fallen asleep in the back seat, cradling her bunny. Miles helped carry her in, gently placing her on the couch and covering her with a soft throw. In the quiet moment that followed, Ava leaned against the doorway. "There's something else," she said. Miles turned. "I want her to know who she is, where she comes from. Not just your world or mine both." He stepped closer. "Then let's build something that includes both." For the first time, Ava smiled, not guarded, not strained, but real. The next day, Ava invited Miles to Zoe's preschool open house. She didn't tell him it was a test, but it was. She wanted to see how he navigated a world where status meant nothing, where the chairs were tiny and the snacks were pretzels and apple slices. To her surprise, he kneeled to tie shoelaces, helped clean up spilled paint, and spoke kindly to the teacher, Miss Davis, a woman in her 60s with salt and pepper curls, who smiled knowingly at Ava after Miles left. "You've got someone trying real hard to be part of your world," she said. Ava looked down at Zoe, who was proudly holding a painting of our family, with 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "I see that," she said. That night, after Zoe was in bed, Ava sat with Brielle at the kitchen table. They shared tea in silence. "I didn't expect any of this," Ava confessed. "He's not the man I remember. He's softer, less polished, more real." Brielle sipped her tea. "People change. Maybe he finally sees the world without his mother's filters." Ava nodded slowly. "Maybe I do too." The next morning, Zoe stood in the hallway holding her locket. "Can I give this to Daddy?" she asked. Ava knelt. "You can give it to whoever makes you feel safe, sweetheart." Zoe beamed. By the time Miles returned the following weekend, Zoe ran to him not with hesitation but with joy. As he lifted her into the air, Ava watched from the window, her hand resting on the frame. He was showing up. And that was a beginning. Some endings feel like beginnings wrapped in quieter clothes. On a rainy evening in December, Ava Sinclair stood before a gallery wall in downtown Seattle. Her sketch framed in soft gold, a man kneeling beside a little girl, his hand extended. It had been the moment everything changed, captured in pencil and patience. Around her, murmurs of admiration filled the room. But she wasn't listening for praise. She was listening for Zoe's laugh. In the corner, Zoe spun in her new blue dress, cheeks flushed, curls bouncing, showing off her art shoes to a couple guests who humored her proudly. Miles sat nearby, smiling gently, hands clasped, letting the child steal the spotlight. The opening night wasn't just Ava's first solo show, it was a tribute to small, silent bravery. Her art told the story of unspoken fears, of delayed love, and of hope returning when least expected. Earlier that day, something unexpected had arrived at her apartment. A thick envelope, no return address. Inside was a check. 7 figures. With it, a single sheet of paper, typed and unsigned. "We wronged you. She deserves better. This is not an apology. It's restitution." She knew who sent it. Claudia Harrison didn't need to sign her name. Ava had stared at the letter for an hour before folding it back. It wouldn't erase the years Zoe grew up without answers, but maybe it was something, an acknowledgement, that power didn't always get the last word. Now, standing beside her framed drawings, Ava didn't think about Claudia anymore. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one too afraid to hope for more than survival, and about the woman she was now, who dared to hang stories on walls. Miles approached quietly, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider. "Your work is stunning," he said. "But you already knew that." Ava smiled softly. "You didn't always believe that." "I didn't always know how to see it," he said. "I do now." They clinked glasses. The fizz popped softly between them. Guests continued to stroll past, pausing at the sketch of a train window. Behind the glass, a blurred silhouette of a man looking out, unaware that a child's reflection, curious reaching, was mirrored beside his own. "Is this Zoe's first time seeing your work in a gallery?" Miles asked. Ava nodded. She asked if she could draw something too. "I said this wall was for her story." He glanced toward Zoe, who now stood beside one of the final pieces, a chalk pastel drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall woman, one tall man, and one little girl, all smiling, all holding hands. "She's not subtle." Miles chuckled. "No," Ava agreed, her eyes glistening. "She's honest." Outside, the rain continued to fall, blanketing the street in shimmering silver. Guests began to slip out, coats wrapped tight, goodbyes exchanged. The space quieted. Brielle approached, grinning. "You did it, V, and no one made you dim your story." Ava reached for her hand. "Thank you for never letting me forget. It mattered." Zoe tugged at Miles's coat. "Daddy, can we get pancakes?" He scooped her up, laughing. "Of course. Art shows always make me hungry." Ava rolled her eyes playfully. "She has you wrapped around her finger, not even denying it." They left the gallery, slowly stepping into the cool night. Rain tapped gently against umbrellas as they walked beneath the city lights. At the curb, Ava paused. "You know, she said I never planned to let you back in." Miles turned. "I know. But you didn't just come back." She looked at Zoe, then back at him. "You stayed." He nodded. "And I will." She offered her hand not as a peace treaty, but as something more durable. Something that could hold the weight of all 3 of them. He took it. Behind them, the gallery lights dimmed, but the glow in the street seemed warmer now. A stranger passing by glanced at the trio, black woman, brown child, white man, and offered a polite nod, no judgment in his eyes. Just kindness. Somehow that was enough. Because in a world that had once denied her voice, Ava had now painted it across an entire city. And in doing so, she'd reminded even the powerful that truth once spoken doesn't go away, it multiplies. There's something quiet about a gallery after the last guest leaves. Just the sound of footsteps fading, the echo of voices that once filled the space, and the artwork still there, still speaking. On that rainy night in Seattle, long after the buzz had gone, a single sketch remained on the wall, a kneeling man, a reaching child, and the space between them filled with trust. It wasn't perfect, but it was true. And sometimes that's the most any of us can offer. Miles didn't win Ava back with wealth or influence. He earned his way into her and Zoe's lives the slow way, by listening, by showing up, by staying. He chose truth over comfort, love over image, and learned that being present meant more than being praised. Ava, once silenced by betrayal and dismissed by power, found her voice not through confrontation, but creation. Her art became witness not only to her own worth, but to the thousands of others who had been overlooked for their skin, their income, or simply because they didn't fit the mold. And Zoe, with all her innocent questions and fearless joy, became the bridge neither adult had dared to cross alone. This wasn't a story about scandal. It was a story about redemption, the kind that doesn't happen in headlines, but in the daily decisions to be kind, to be honest, to be better. It reminds us that even those with the greatest influence must answer to something greater conscience, and that sometimes those we overlook are the ones holding the key to our better selves. The heart of this journey is simple, really. Prejudice cannot stand where love has room to grow. When we set aside fear and expectation, we create space for possibility, for connection, for repair, for justice. Talent, character, and care are not limited by background or color. They bloom where they are nurtured, and dignity once offered often finds its way back. Like a locket carried close to the heart, A quiet act of courage can unlock generations of healing. So tonight, wherever you are, perhaps think of the people around you, not by how they look or where they come from, but by what truths they carry. You never know when a simple act of grace, listening, believing, staying, might change everything. And if this story stirred something in you, consider passing that warmth along. Someone near you may be waiting for a kind word, a second chance, or simply to be seen.